Hey guys, so as promised, we're going to go over some of the most missed questions on our last test. I believe we're going to go over about 7 questions. Each of them will be listed in the video title. The order they're listed in the video title is the order that they're done, so you can kind of jump around to different parts of the video to kind of find the questions you're looking for. Alright, so let's go ahead and begin. So the first one is 24, and 24 asks us to make a graph of this equation. So there's many ways to go about making a graph, some of which include just plugging in arbitrary points and seeing where they map out on the graph. That can work, and that's great, but the method I'm going to recommend to you, and the method that we've been working on in class, is finding both the x-intercept and then the y-intercept. These are methods that we're always going to use all the way up through calculus. It's very good to get in the habit of finding these things, and they exercise all the skills we've learned, so very good practice. Let's go ahead and find the x and y-intercept. So we need to remember that for the x-intercept, y is going to be equal to 0, and for the y-intercept, x is going to be equal to 0. Now, we want to go ahead, so we have a statement to start off with for each. We can now take our equation, and I'll work on the x-intercept. We have 5x plus 20 is equal to 4y, and that's just the original equation that I started with over here. So now, for my x-intercept, I know y has to equal 0, so I'm going to go ahead and substitute 0 in for guess where. That's right, we're going to put it in for y. So we're going to have 4 times 0, which is equal to, and then everything else in that equation. So 5x plus 20. So immediately, you should see some things that we can simplify, and that thing should be 4 times 0. 4 times 0 is going to go to 0, and then that'll give us 5x plus 20. Now notice we have one variable left in our equation, which means there's one variable that we can solve for. As well, we started off saying that y is equal to 0. So for this, we know that what y is going to equal, now we're going to need to find x. And that's very convenient because, like I said before, we have a single variable of x. We can go ahead and start using our equation solving skills to find out what x is going to be. So we're going to subtract 20 from both sides. That'll give us 5x, which equals negative 20. I'll now divide both sides by 5, and that will give me x is equal to negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. So immediately I know my x-intercept is going to be negative 4. 0, negative 4. So this x-intercept as a coordinate would be negative 4, comma 0. So now I'm going to go ahead and start looking through my options and see which one has a y-intercept of negative 4, comma 0. Well, I can see this one has that intercept. I see that this one does not have that intercept. I see that this one does not have that intercept. This one does not have that intercept. And lo and behold, neither does this one. And sometimes you'll kind of look out like this, where finding one piece of information tells you the only possibility that it could be. Now, just to pretend as though this wasn't the only piece of information we had, or that we needed to eliminate more options, let's go ahead and find the y-intercept and make sure this agrees with our original prediction, but also that way you can see how to find the y-intercept. So our y-intercept is going to be 5x plus 20 equals 4y. Whoops, sorry, not 40. Notice I'm starting this one off the same exact way as I did my x-intercept. It's a very good habit to write your equation before you substitute anything in, and then go ahead and make that substitution. So in this case, x is equal to 0, so I put 0 where the x is. Again, I can simplify 5 times 0, and that just becomes 20, which equals 4y. And now, again, so notice I started off with x, and I need to now find y. And this should be common intuition that when you're looking for coordinate points, you're either going to have x or you're going to have y, and whenever you have one, you're going to wonder what's the other one. So we have x, we want to know what y is, and that makes sense because we're trying to find the y-intercept. So now let's go ahead and divide both sides by 4. 20 divided by 4 is going to be 5, which is equal to y. So our y-intercept is going to be 5. And when we go ahead and check our answer, yep, indeed that does work out. And we can look at a lot of these other ones and see that none of those other ones really aren't going to work out with this. Besides maybe E, this one would have a y-intercept of 5, but it clearly doesn't meet the criteria for our x-intercept. Okay. Alright, so same deal with this one, except our equation looks just a little bit different. Now, this is really just seeing how well you know the method. It's trying to give you a different format of an equation. However, it's still going to want you to do the same thing, which is find the x-intercept and find the y-intercept. So I'm going to look for my x-intercept. Anytime I look for an x-intercept, remember, y is going to be equal to 0. And so I'll go ahead and, well, I guess before I start finding, well, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So I'll write my equation right here. Negative y plus x is equal to negative 2. All right, and so now I want to go ahead and plug in y equals 0. So again, notice that the only variable left to solve for is going to be x, and that's good because we knew what y was, we didn't know what x was. So this can be simplified to x equals negative 2. And look at that, there's nothing left to solve for x. That was actually a pretty easy question. We found out that x was equal to negative 2. So now we can go ahead and check our options. So x equal to negative 2, well that's a no. X equal to negative 2, well that's a no. X equal to negative 2, that's a no. And x equal to negative 2, this one could work. And x equal to negative 2, well this one could work too. So we are going to have to go ahead and find out what that y-intercept is going to be. So we'll go ahead and find our y-intercept. So we will have now x set equal to 0. Remember the y-intercept has x set equal to 0. We'll go ahead, we'll write our equation. And now we're going to make that substitution for x equals 0. So 0 is equal to negative 2y. Oops, that's a y. I can simplify this because negative y plus 0 is just going to be negative y, which equals negative 2. And now I'm almost done, but I have a negative in front of my y. And something important to remember is that when we see a negative sign, we can remember that's like any number being multiplied by negative 1. So now I can think of my y as being multiplied by negative 1. So the question would be, how do I get rid of a multiplication of negative 1? And well, that's pretty simple. I'm just going to divide. Anytime I multiply, I would divide to get rid of it. So I'm now going to divide by negative 1 on both sides. My negative 1's cancel, and I'm left with y is equal to positive 2. So when I plugged in x equals 0, I got y is equal to 2, and so my y-intercept should be 2. So I see y equals 2 could work for that. Y equals 2, well that one could not work, so that eliminates that answer choice. So D would be our final answer. But again, remember, you may not have the same version as this one. Your answer may have a different letter. Okay, so for this one, we have to find the equivalent expression. And when we look at this, we notice that the square has been removed, and so we're going to need to expand this, or get rid of this square right here. So first things first, when we see something written with a square, we can always go ahead and write it as just the same thing underneath the square multiplied 2 times. So we can write 2x minus 5 multiplied by 2x minus 5. All right, and now once it's in this format, I can see that I'm going to have 2 polynomials, or 2 binomials, because there's 2 terms in each, multiplying each other. So the method I like to use for calculating that is going to be the box method. So I go ahead and I create my box, and I'm going to write a 2x minus 5 and a 2x minus 5. And remember, my box is just a way of calculating multiplication of many things. So now I just start multiplying these together. So I get 4x squared. And this will be negative 10x. This will be negative 10x again, and then this will be 25. All right, so I got those 4 terms out of that multiplication. So I can now go ahead, and we'll bring the work down here. I can write equals, and I'm going to list out all of those terms, because that's what happens when I multiplied all those things. I got all these terms. I got 4 different terms. 10x plus 25. Okay, so now I may stop and I may look for an answer that resembles this, but you may be out of luck and you're not going to find one. And the reason why is because there's more simplification that can be done to this. When we look at this, we see x squareds, we see x's, and we see non-x's. And remember, anything that is a like term can be combined. And so x squared doesn't have a like term, this 25 doesn't have a like term, but these 10x's are definitely like terms. They share the same variable with the same exponent. So I'm going to go ahead and combine them, negative 10 and negative 10. Well, that's like being in debt $10 twice, so that would be negative 20x plus 25 and 4x squared. And now I do see that answer there. It's going to be right there. Okay. Question number 18. So my apologies, the question got lopped off for some of these. Question number 18 is asking you to find the y-intercept. And a good way to also kind of tell it's looking for a y-intercept is because it gives you nothing but y options, right? Notice it's always y equals something. So we're needing to find some kind of y coordinate, and it turns out to be the y-intercept. Okay, and that was the original question. It just got kind of lopped off when cropping this. So remember, to find my y-intercept, I want to always set x equal to 0. And once I set x equal to 0, I can go ahead and write my equation. And then make that substitution of x equals 0. So I'm going to go ahead and replace x with 0. So 15 times 0 minus sign 10y equals 30. Okay, some simplification that can be done again. So 15 times 0, that can be 0. So that'll turn into just 10y, which equals 30. I'll go ahead and bring this up over here. So 10y is equal to 30, and now I see that 10 is next to y, which means it's 10 times y. So I need to get rid of a multiplication of 10. How can I do that? Well, what's the opposite of multiplication? Hopefully you're thinking division, and you want to divide both sides by 10. So now you get y is equal to 3. Okay, so notice we are just starting with our statement of x equals 0. That's going to be true anytime we have a y-intercept. And then we go ahead and find out what y is equal to. So that means our coordinate for y would be 0, 3. And we see y is equal to 3. That is an answer choice, which is good. One small side note, so what's a way that you could check your answer choice? Well, what we could do is we could take our y value and we could plug it back into the equation and see if it makes x equals 0. Because if it makes x equals 0, remember, x equals 0 always means y-intercept. These two are like the same thing, right? X equals 0 means y-intercept, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in y is equal to 3. So 10 times 3 minus 15x is equal to 30, and that should give me x equals 0. So 10 times 3 is going to be 30 minus 15x, which equals 30. Now I have 30 minus 15x, and so that 30 is a positive 30, so I need to get rid of a positive 30 from this side of the equation. Well, how could I do that? I could subtract 30. So I subtract 30 from both sides, and I get negative 15x is equal to 0. And so now there's two ways to think about this. The traditional algebraic way is to get rid of the negative 15 that's multiplying by dividing by negative 15. And I see 0 divided by negative 15 is just equal to 0. Negative 15's cancel, and that gives me x is equal to 0. Now, another way to think of it is that equation up here, or at least right here, is saying negative 15 times what is equal to 0. And so negative 15 times what is equal to 0? Well, the only thing that can multiply a number to 0 is 0 itself. So the answer must be x equals 0. Okay, so this checks out, which is good because it says that x is equal to 0. That means it's a y-intercept. Okay, this one we are looking for an x-intercept this time. So remember, x-intercept is always going to mean y is equal to 0. So we're going to go ahead and write our equation. Y is equal to 16x minus 8. And I'm going to plug in 0 for y, so 0 is equal to 16x minus 8. And now notice I have x left to solve for. This is good because I'm looking for my x-intercept, so it should make sense that I'm solving for x. So I'll add 8 to both sides, and that'll give me 8 equals 16x. Bringing this up over here, I have 8 is equal to 16x. So I see that 16 is multiplying x. Well, how do I get rid of something that multiplies? I'm going to go ahead and divide it. So I will do 16 divided by 16. Remember, I have to be fair. I have to do that to both sides. And now I cancel out my 16s. So 8 divided by 16 should now be equal to, sorry, it's a poor looking 6. 8 divided by 16 should be equal to x. Now, I may stop here and I may look for that answer and I may not quite see it. And the reason why is because there's more to be simplified. And if you ever get to a point like this, don't doubt yourself. See, check your answer, check if there's a way to simplify it. Odds are you did the correct work, you just need to simplify your answer a little bit more. So we look at 18 over 6, and I notice that I can divide both of those by 8. And if I divided the top and bottom by 8, that would give me 1/2 is equal to x. Which then it does turn out that that is one of our answers. All right, so 2 more questions left. First, question 20. So 20, again, that original question got lopped off, but the original question was, what is the x-intercept of this? So we are looking for the x-intercept. And if you've been watching the other questions, you realize that this is just the same method over and over again. So really, once you get this, these questions aren't going to be too hard because you're just going to use the same method for each question. So our x-intercept, y is going to be equal to 0. That will always be true. We will always set y equal to 0 for our x-intercept. And now we want to go ahead and write our equation. 10y minus 15x is equal to 30. And we want to go ahead and now substitute in 0 for y. So we're going to write 0 times 10. So 0 times 10 minus 15x, which will be equal to 30. So I notice that 10 times 0 can be simplified, so we're going to write this as 15x, which equals 30. Negative 15x, which equals 30. What am I going to do to solve this? Well, I see that negative 15 is multiplying x, so I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by negative 15. So my negative 15s will cancel. And then 30 divided by negative 15, well, that's going to equal, and I'll go ahead and write my work over here, that's going to equal negative 2. And so x should be equal to negative 2. And I look at my answer choices, and I do see x is equal to negative 2. Now, again, how could you check this, or how could you maybe reverse engineer your solution and use your answer choices to find your answer? Well, you can plug in your x values, so in this case x is equal to negative 2, plug it into your original equation, and then see if you can get out y is equal to 0. Because if you can get out y is equal to 0, remember y equals 0 is always going to mean an x-intercept. Okay, so we'll go ahead, we'll substitute in -2. So -2 times -15, 10y, and equals 30. All right, so there's some simplification that can be done. I can write 30 equals 30. So 10y, and now the negative times a negative made a positive, so I'll write a plus sign right there. And so subtracting 30 from both sides, that'll give me 10y is equal to 0. And again, there's two ways to look at this. I can ask myself 10 times what equals 0, and I can know that the answer is going to be y equals 0. Or I can see that 10 is multiplying y, so I can divide it by 10. So 0 divided by 10 equals 0, and so y is equal to 0, so that is good. That is my x-intercept. Okay, oh, did we skip to question 20? I'm so sorry. I guess we'll go back and do question 21. Alright, so question 21 is another graphing question. And when you get these graphing questions, your best method of attack is going to be finding your x-intercept and then your y-intercept. You find your x and y-intercept, and those are pretty characteristic points, meaning that they can identify what a graph is going to look like. So we'll go ahead and find those and then identify our graph. So x-intercept, remember y will always equal 0. And we will have 2x minus 5y equal to 10. That's our original equation. We just rewrote it. And I'm going to plug in 0 for y. So I'll get 0 times -5 and 2x right there equals 10. So again, there's some simplification that can be done. I can do -5 times 0, and that's going to be 0, so that'll just give me 2x, which equals 10. And now I'm looking for what can multiply by 2 to get to 10, or if I divide both sides by 2, I see that 5 could have multiplied by 2. Whoops. I see that 5 could have multiplied by 2 in order to get to 10. So I'm going to have x is equal to 5. And again, notice the 2's cancel, and 10 divided by 2 is 5, so everything makes sense. So x equals 5 is what I'm going to be looking for. Well, x equals 5, no, that doesn't work. X equals 5, well, yeah, that one could work. X equals 5, no, that one doesn't work. X equals 5, no, this one doesn't work. And x equals 5, no, this one doesn't work. So again, that was really helpful because just finding one piece of information out about this graph eliminated all but one answer choice for me. So right now I'm pretty confident that B is going to be my answer, but I'm going to go ahead and find my y-intercept just to make sure of that. So remember, when I look for a y-intercept, x will always be equal to 0. So I'll go ahead and write my equation, and then I can make that substitution for x. So I plug in 0 for x, and I get 0 times 2 minus 5y is equal to 10. 2 times 0 is going to be 0, negative 5y will equal 10. And now I want to get rid of the negative 5 that's multiplying y, so I will divide by negative 5 on both sides. And I see that my answer is going to be y equals negative 2. And so I check with my answer, and I see that my y-intercept is indeed y equals negative 2. And so that's good. That tells me that that is definitely the answer. All right, I hope these help. Remember, tutoring is always available for the questions that did not come up on this video. And I look forward to seeing you guys in class. Have a great day.